process?
I don't think it will be possible to. Well, because the information will be available. I mean, you will just as now you can go into a library and take out any book you want, any bit of information. I mean, huge catalogues will come up on the TV screen, which you can go through, pick out what you want, interact with it probably. I mean, people will be creating. The future Gettys, of this world will not create physical museums. I mean, but museums that only exist electronically within electronic
museums are going that way anyway.
Yeah, you won't need to. I mean, all this talk about the new Tate Gallery, it doesn't need to be built of cement and brick and mortar. It could only exist on computer files. And I can see all sorts of museums being constructed by some rich men of the future. Museums of you could have huge museums of technological artifacts, imaginative artifacts too. You could have a museum of film stars' lips. You could have a museum of anything, which only existed technologically, but which you'll be able to walk around, inside the virtual space of these, virtual museums. And the same will be true of all sorts of experiences. I mean, the possibilities are limitless, I think. They just depend on the hardware, don't they? And the software. But once they've cracked that, they'll move forward. And virtual reality will be more convincing than everyday reality.
One thing we talked about is that your work kind of involves a lot of discussion of women as a kind of particular sensitivity to women.
Glad you said that. Usually I'm accused of the opposite.
We were ever wondering whether you ever thought of having sex change.
I wouldn't mind. I'd like to go back to being a young man. That would be rather enjoyable. No, my age.
It's probably the right time to do it.
Yeah. No, I never thought of it. It's never occurred to me actually, but I mean, I've always admired women, and I accept how I have a son and 2 daughters, and I've always admired women enormously, but I can see that being a woman is playing black, in chess. You're handicapped. I mean, there's no question about it. Huge biases still exist against women. Men have the advantage. Like white in chess, they make the first move. And that may change, but I mean, the problem may be that there are too many men, I mean, this is where one's on the threshold of it, enormous changes, because I take for granted, that within, say, 20 or 30 years, it will be not just possible, but every parents will be able to choose the sex of their children. There'll be simple diagnostic tests and simple methods.
But that's already possible.
Yes, but it'll be widespread.
Yeah.
And the pressure of demand will prevent any sort of legislation against it. And parents will, in effect, choose the sex of their children. And it may well be possible within 50 or more years for them to choose significant attributes. I mean, that's already possible on a limited sphere. You'll be able to screen out not just dangerous inherited diseases, but you will be able to pick genes for height, or or sports ability, or mathematical ability. Also temperamental factors. You may be able to select people of aggressive temperament or passive temperament. All this will be possible. But I mean, if you take the sex thing alone, that could have enormous repercussions of an unexpected kind, because the assumption most people make, and this would certainly be true of, say, Asia and Africa, most most parents would choose sons. There's huge financial and social advantage in having a lot of sons in the third world. Less so over here, but most people, one assumes that most parents, even in the West, in Western Europe and the States, would choose sons, something like 60-40 or something, which could lead to enormous social disruption. Excessive males, particularly aggressive males, large aggressive males, could lead to, all sorts of social and economic stresses. You might, find a huge male underclass developing, crime rising, and the like. So, people might notice that in, say, certain enclaves around the world, certain states, one or two states in the United States, one or two more civilized areas in Western Europe, that where parents have chosen daughters rather than sons, the crime rate has fallen. Social stability is much higher. The more caring and user-friendly societies come about. People might suddenly realize the problem with the world is not, too few albatross or dolphins or whales, but too many men. So let's have fewer men. Now that could bring about an enormous social revolution. It's unpredictable. You might find a society in which only 20% of the population is male.
Put that to step.
I leave you to extrapolate from there.
Yeah, we were wondering, in most societies there's a big gap between the kind of dominant ethics and the actual processes that occur. What do you think is the mechanism that allows the two to coexist?
Give me an example. What were you thinking of?
Well, at the moment in Britain, the obvious example is the Conservative Party Back to Basics campaign, and it's crass.
That's a PR gimmick.
Yeah, sure. It's a crass thing, but the general thing of white heterosexual families reproducing nicely and going to work every day and being totally law-abiding. When in fact we have a kind of seething massive difference underneath. What's the mechanism that allows the two to
coexist
simultaneously? Yeah.
I think it's a sign of our political system beginning to unravel. But, so long our politics have been conducted successfully, as a branch of advertising, and politicians believe what they say. They think they're living in the real world. Major is as much a victim of his back to basics nonsense as Ronald Reagan with his memories of World War II movies. I think, the authority of politicians must be at an all-time low, certainly in this country. I don't know about Italy, probably in Italy too. I think the real reason is that people see that politicians, politics is no longer where the main decisions are taken. The consumer landscape and the information landscapes are governed by totally different logics, and they're the ones that that really shape our society. The media landscape is what really governs everything. I don't want to sound flippant, but in a way, the sort of, the failure of the Ford, I can't think of a good example, but the failure of a consumer product, like say the Ford Sierra when it first came out, is probably much more significant than the loss of a government seat at a by-election. That sends tremors through the Commons, and everyone's very unsettled. Rumours begin, shall we get rid of the Prime Minister, or whatever it may be. But, for a major motor car, and its launch to be perceived as a flop, has an enormous knock-on effect, both through the psyche in terms of consumer choice,